She had $23, a thin jacket, and a choice that would change everything. When 17-year-old Jasmine found a dying woman in the snow, she could have walked away. She could have saved herself. Instead, she took off her only jacket, wrapped the stranger in her dead grandmother's blanket, the last thing she had in this world, and held her through 8 hours of deadly cold. By morning, they were both dying. But what happened next? Nobody could have predicted it. This is the true story of one freezing December night that saved 2 lives, created a family from strangers, and proved that sometimes the person you save ends up saving you right back. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll never look at kindness the same way again. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you about a night that changed everything. A night so cold, it felt like the world itself had frozen over. This is a story about choices, about kindness, and about how one moment can transform not just one life, but many. Picture this: Chicago, December, the kind of winter night where the wind cuts through you like a knife. The kind of night when most people hurry home, lock their doors, and thank God they have somewhere warm to sleep. But not everyone has that luxury. Her name was Jasmine Brooks, and she was 17 years old. Just 17. At an age when most kids are worrying about prom dates and college applications, Jasmine was worrying about where she'd sleep that night. She'd been on her own since she was 14 when her grandmother, the only family she had left, passed away from a stroke. 3 years of moving from shelter to shelter, couch to couch, sometimes sleeping in library bathrooms or on subway trains. That December night, Jasmine had exactly $23 in her pocket. The group home had asked her to leave. Not because she'd done anything wrong, but because she'd turned 17, and they needed the bed for younger kids. That's how it works when you're in the system. You age out. You're on your own. Good luck. She walked through the wealthy neighborhoods of Lincoln Park, trying to stay warm, trying to figure out her next move. The mansions stood tall and proud, their windows glowing with warm light. Inside, families were having dinner, watching TV, being together. Outside, Jasmine walked alone, her thin coat doing almost nothing against the bitter cold. She wasn't supposed to be in this neighborhood. She knew that. A young black girl with a backpack, walking slowly past expensive homes. That's the kind of thing that gets police called. But Jasmine was just trying to stay warm, trying to keep moving, because if she stopped, the cold would win. And then she heard it. A voice. Crying. Confused and frightened. Every instinct told Jasmine to keep walking. Getting involved with other people's problems when you looked like her, when you had no address and no one to vouch for you. That was dangerous. That was the kind of thing that could get you arrested or worse. But the crying continued, and Jasmine found herself walking toward it. In the shadows between 2 massive homes, she found an elderly woman. White hair wild around her face, wearing nothing but a thin nightgown and slippers, shivering violently in the December cold. She was clutching something to her chest, a framed photograph, the glass cracked. "Ma'am," Jasmine called out softly. "Are you okay? Are you lost?" The woman turned to her, eyes clouded and confused. "I need to find my daughter," she said, her voice trembling. "Catherine. She's waiting for me. I'm late. I'm so late." Jasmine's heart sank. She recognized those signs. Her grandmother had been the same way before she died. Dementia. This woman was having an episode. "What's your name, ma'am?" Jasmine asked gently. "Margaret. Margaret Stone. And I need to find Catherine." Jasmine looked around. Empty streets. No one to help. This woman was going to freeze to death out here. "Do you know where you live, Miss Margaret? Can you tell me your address?" Margaret's face crumpled. "I can't remember." "Why can't I remember?" In that moment, Jasmine had a choice. She could call 911, the smart thing, the safe thing. But Jasmine had learned not to trust the police. Had learned that when you were a homeless black teenager, encounters with law enforcement rarely went well. And if they found her here with a confused elderly white woman who couldn't explain who Jasmine was or why she was helping, Jasmine couldn't risk it. But she also couldn't leave this woman to die. "Okay, Miss Margaret," Jasmine said, making her decision. "Let's figure this out together. Let's walk around and see if anything looks familiar." She took off her jacket, her only jacket, the one thing standing between her and the deadly cold, and wrapped it around Margaret's frail shoulders. "But you'll be cold," Margaret said, a moment of clarity breaking through the confusion. "I'll be okay," Jasmine lied. "I'm tougher than I look." They walked together, slowly, Margaret leaning heavily on Jasmine's arm. They tried gate after gate, but nothing looked familiar to Margaret. She kept talking, her conversation wandering through time, mixing past and present, calling for people who might not even be alive anymore. The temperature kept dropping. Jasmine's thin long-sleeved shirt did nothing against the wind. After 30 minutes of walking, Margaret's legs gave out. "I'm so tired," she whispered. "Can we rest?" They were in front of a huge stone mansion, all dark except for security lights. There was a small alcove near the gate, sheltered from the worst of the wind. Jasmine helped Margaret sit down, then settled beside her. That's when Jasmine noticed something. A heating vent near the base of the wall, barely giving off any warmth. But it was something. Maybe, just maybe, it would be enough to keep them alive. Jasmine pulled out her backpack and found the blanket at the very bottom. Her grandmother's blanket. Thin, worn, full of holes, but it smelled like home, like love, like everything she'd lost. She'd sworn she'd never give this blanket away. It was all she had left. But looking at Margaret, so frail and confused and cold, Jasmine knew what she had to do. She wrapped the blanket around both of them and pulled Margaret close. "What's this?" Margaret asked, touching the soft fabric. "It was my grandmother's," Jasmine said quietly. "She died 3 years ago. This blanket is all I have left of her." "Then you shouldn't waste it on me," Margaret said. "It's not wasted," Jasmine said firmly. "My grandma would want me to use it to help someone. She believed in taking care of people." And so they sat, huddled together against the cold, as the temperature plummeted and the night grew darker. Time moves differently when you're fighting to survive. Every minute feels like an hour. Every hour feels like a lifetime. Jasmine checked her phone. 7:15. The battery was at 15%. She turned it off to save power, just in case they needed it for an emergency. Though what emergency could be worse than this, she didn't know. The cold was unlike anything Jasmine had experienced before. It wasn't just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. The kind of cold that makes your bones ache, that makes your thoughts fuzzy, that makes you want to close your eyes and sleep, even though you know that sleeping might mean never waking up. "Tell me about your grandmother," Margaret said after a while, her voice weak but curious. So Jasmine talked. She told Margaret about Grandma Rose, about her laugh that could fill a room, about how she sang hymns while she cooked even though she couldn't carry a tune, about how she worked 2 jobs to keep them fed and housed, but always made time to help Jasmine with homework, to ask about her day, to make her feel loved. "She sounds wonderful," Margaret said. "She was," Jasmine said, her voice breaking. "She taught me that being poor doesn't mean being unkind, that you can lose everything material and still be rich if you have a good heart." "She was right," Margaret said. Then her eyes drifted, losing focus. "Is Catherine coming? She's supposed to pick me up." "She'll be here soon," Jasmine said, even though she was beginning to suspect Catherine might be gone, just like Grandma Rose was gone. The hours crawled by. 8 o'clock. 9 o'clock. 10 o'clock. Jasmine talked continuously, telling Margaret stories, asking her questions, anything to keep her awake. Margaret drifted in and out of lucidity, sometimes calling Jasmine Catherine, sometimes asking for her husband, sometimes clear and present. During one clear moment around 11, Margaret looked at Jasmine with sharp, focused eyes. "You're freezing," she said, her voice strong with concern. "You're going to die out here trying to save me." "No, I'm not," Jasmine said, though her body had stopped shivering, which she knew was a very bad sign. "We're going to make it through this night. Both of us." "Why are you doing this?" Margaret asked. "You don't even know me. You could leave. You could save yourself." Jasmine thought about that. Thought about Grandma Rose's words. Thought about the promise she'd made at her grandmother's hospital bed. "Because someone needed help," Jasmine said simply. "And I was there. That's reason enough." Margaret reached out with a shaking hand and touched Jasmine's face. "Your grandmother raised you right," she whispered. "She'd be so proud of you." Jasmine felt tears freeze on her cheeks. By midnight, Jasmine was losing her fight against hypothermia. Her thoughts scattered. Her vision blurred. Her body felt heavy and distant, like it belonged to someone else. But she kept her arms around Margaret, kept the blanket wrapped around them both, kept her body between Margaret and the worst of the cold. "Jasmine." Margaret's voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you still there?" "Still here," Jasmine mumbled, forcing the words through numb lips. "Not going anywhere." "Don't leave me," Margaret said, and she sounded scared, like a child. "Please don't leave me alone." "Never," Jasmine promised. "I'm not leaving you." Around 2 in the morning, Jasmine stopped being able to feel her hands or feet. Her core temperature had dropped dangerously low. She knew, in the part of her brain that could still think clearly, that she was dying. But Margaret was still alive, still breathing, still warm against her body. That was enough. That had to be enough. Jasmine thought about her grandmother, about her smile and her laugh, and the way she used to braid Jasmine's hair every Sunday morning. She thought about what Grandma Rose had said about staying kind even when the world wasn't kind back. "I kept my promise, Grandma," Jasmine whispered into the darkness. "I stayed kind right to the end." Margaret stirred against her. "Who are you talking to?" "My grandmother," Jasmine said, "telling her I love her." "Tell mine I love her too," Margaret said, her voice dreamy. "And my Catherine. Tell them all I love them." "I will," Jasmine promised, even though she was pretty sure they were both going to die here, frozen on the steps of this mansion. Two lost souls who'd found each other at the end. The snow started falling around 3 in the morning. Big, heavy flakes that accumulated quickly, covering them in white like a frozen shroud. Jasmine's consciousness faded in and out. One moment she was aware of the cold and Margaret's weight against her. The next moment she was somewhere warm, somewhere safe, and Grandma Rose was there, smiling at her, telling her everything would be okay. Just a little longer, Jasmine told herself when she came back to awareness. Just hold on a little longer. But she didn't know if anyone was coming. Didn't know if anyone would find them. Didn't know if she'd wake up again, or if the next time she closed her eyes would be the last time. All she knew was that she wasn't going to let go. Wasn't going to leave Margaret alone. Wasn't going to break her promise to stay. At 5:47 in the morning, headlights swept across the steps. Jasmine tried to open her eyes, but they felt frozen shut. She heard a car door slam, heard footsteps running, heard someone screaming. "Mom! Oh my God, Mom!" Jasmine forced her eyes open, just barely. A woman was running toward them, tall, dark-skinned, wearing an expensive coat, her face twisted with horror and fear. This must be Catherine, Margaret's daughter. Jasmine tried to speak, tried to explain, but her voice wouldn't work. She gathered every bit of strength she had left and pushed the words out. "She was lost," Jasmine whispered. "I couldn't leave her." And then everything went dark. Jasmine woke up to warmth. Real, deep, penetrating warmth that hurt almost as much as the cold had. She was in a hospital bed, heavy blankets piled on top of her. And 4 dripped slowly into her arm. Monitors beeped steadily beside her. For a moment she panicked. Hospitals meant bills she couldn't pay. Hospitals meant questions she couldn't answer. But then a nurse appeared, a woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. "Welcome back, sweetheart," she said softly. "You gave us quite a scare." "Margaret," Jasmine croaked, her throat raw. "Is she?" "Mrs. Stone is fine," the nurse said, smiling. "Mild hypothermia, but she's going to be perfectly okay. Thanks to you." Her eyes filled with tears. "You saved her life, honey. You almost died doing it, but you saved her life." Jasmine felt something release in her chest. Margaret was alive. That was all that mattered. The door opened and a woman walked in. The same woman from the steps, Margaret's daughter. Up close, she looked to be in her late 40s, with natural hair pulled back in a neat bun and eyes red from crying. Behind her stood 2 police officers. Jasmine's stomach tightened. Here it came. The questions. The suspicion. The assumption that she must have done something wrong. But the female officer stepped forward with an expression that was surprisingly kind. "I'm Detective Lisa Washington," she said. "This is Officer James Torres. We just need to understand what happened. You're not in trouble, sweetheart." So Jasmine told them everything. Finding Margaret in the alley, trying to help her find home, giving her the jacket and the blanket, sitting with her through the night. "You gave her your only jacket?" Margaret's daughter, Catherine Stone, asked quietly, her voice shaking. "In 15-degree weather?" "Yes, ma'am," Jasmine said. "She needed it more than me." "And this blanket," Catherine said, holding up Grandma Rose's worn blanket, now clean and folded. "The hospital staff said you told them it was all you had left of your grandmother?" Jasmine nodded, unable to speak. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "Why? Why would you give up something so precious for a stranger?" "Because she needed someone," Jasmine said simply. "And I was there." Detective Washington closed her notebook. "Ms. Stone, the report will show that this young woman saved your mother's life. I'll file it that way." After the officers left, Catherine pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. "Do you have somewhere to go when they release you?" she asked. Jasmine shook her head. "No, ma'am. But I'll figure something out. I always do. No, Catherine said firmly. You're coming home with us. Jasmine blinked. Ma'am, you don't have to. You saved my mother's life, Catherine interrupted, her voice strong but gentle. You gave everything you had for a stranger. I have a guest house on my property. It's warm, safe, private. You can stay there. For as long as you need. I can't accept that, Jasmine whispered. You don't even know me. Catherine smiled sadly. I know enough. I watched the security footage, every minute of it. I saw you wrap your arms around my mother to keep her warm. I saw you dying to save her. Her voice broke. You're not sleeping on the streets after that. Jasmine stared at her, afraid to hope. My mother has dementia, Catherine continued. It's been getting worse. I have staff, I have systems, but that night, the door alarm malfunctioned. Mom wandered out. I was at a business conference in New York. If you hadn't found her, she couldn't finish. But I did, Jasmine said softly. Yes, Catherine said. You did. And now I'm going to help you the way you helped her. 3 days later, Jasmine was discharged from the hospital. Catherine picked her up in a sleek black car, and they drove to a part of Chicago Jasmine had only seen from bus windows. The stone mansion was massive, brick and stone and tall windows that sparkled in the winter sun. As they pulled through the gates, Jasmine saw the spot where she'd spent that terrible night. The alcove where she'd wrapped her body around Margaret. The steps where she'd nearly died. We're putting up a memorial there, Catherine said, noticing where Jasmine was looking. A reminder of what really matters. The front door opened, and a teenage boy came running out, maybe 15, with Catherine's smile and warm brown eyes. Is this her? He asked excitedly. Is this Jasmine? David, Catherine said, her voice warm. Let her get out of the car first. Jasmine climbed out, feeling awkward in her borrowed hospital clothes. You saved Grandma Margaret, David said, looking at her with open admiration. You're a hero. I'm not a hero, Jasmine said uncomfortably. I just did what anyone would do. No, a voice said from the doorway. Margaret stood there, leaning on a walker, her eyes clearer than they'd been that terrible night. You did what most people wouldn't do. That's exactly what makes you a hero. She shuffled forward slowly, and Jasmine met her halfway, taking her frail hand. Thank you, Margaret said, tears streaming down her face. Thank you for staying with me. For not leaving me alone. I couldn't leave you, Jasmine said simply. You needed help. Margaret patted her cheek with her free hand. You're a good girl. Your grandmother raised you right. Inside, the mansion was overwhelming. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, art on the walls that probably cost more than anything Jasmine had ever owned. I know it's a lot, Catherine said, noticing her expression. But this is your home now. For as long as you want it to be. A woman appeared from one of the side rooms. Patricia, the housekeeper, with kind eyes and a warm smile. Let me show you to your room, Patricia said. Jasmine followed her up a sweeping staircase, David trailing behind, talking excitedly about school and his basketball team and his cat named Professor. Patricia opened a door, and Jasmine stepped inside and stopped. The room was huge. A real bed with a thick comforter. A desk by the window. A bookshelf. A dresser. A door that led to a private bathroom. It's too much, Jasmine whispered. It's yours, Patricia said firmly. All of it. After everyone left, Jasmine sat on the edge of the bed and carefully took out her few possessions. Grandma Rose's photograph. The journal she'd been writing in since she was 14. A book of poetry. She placed the photo on the nightstand, and for the first time in 3 years she cried. Really cried. Not from sadness, but from relief, from gratitude, from the overwhelming feeling of finally being safe. The first few weeks were the hardest. Jasmine kept waiting for it to end. For Catherine to realize this was a mistake. For someone to tell her she didn't belong. She barely touched anything in her room. She made her bed every morning with military precision. She ate sparingly at meals. She moved through the mansion like a ghost, trying not to leave a mark. On the 6th day, Catherine found her in the library, looking at books but too afraid to take one off the shelf. Jasmine, Catherine said, sitting down across from her. We need to talk. Jasmine's heart sank. Here it came. This isn't working, Catherine continued. Jasmine nodded, trying not to cry. I understand. I can pack. No, Catherine interrupted. That's not what I mean. I mean you being afraid to live here isn't working. You're tiptoeing around like you're going to be kicked out any minute. She stood up and pulled books off the shelf, stacking them on the table. Take these to your room. Read them. Dog-ear the pages if you want. They're just books. They're meant to be used. Catherine sat back down, her expression softer. I want you to understand something. I'm not doing this out of pity or obligation. I'm doing this because you're family now. And this is your home. How do I know you won't change your mind? Jasmine asked, voicing her deepest fear. Because tomorrow, we're meeting with a lawyer to start guardianship paperwork, Catherine said. Because I'm enrolling you in school. Because I'm making you legally, officially, permanently part of this family. She leaned forward. Jasmine, I'm not a foster parent who took you in temporarily. I'm someone who wants you here, who needs you here. You reminded me what matters. You showed David what real courage looks like. Catherine's voice cracked. Let me give you what you gave my mother, a chance. A real chance at life. After that conversation, things shifted. Jasmine started taking books to her room. She started eating normal portions. She laughed at David's jokes. She sat with Margaret on her bad days, reading to her, keeping her company. And slowly, the mansion started to feel less like a museum and more like home. 2 weeks after moving in, Catherine sat Jasmine down with a stack of papers. You're 17, but you left school when you were 14, Catherine said. I want to get you a tutor so you can catch up and eventually take your GED. Once you pass that, we can talk about college. Maybe cosmetology school, if that interests you. Or culinary arts. Or nursing. Whatever you want. Jasmine stared at the study guides and college brochures. I don't know if I'm smart enough anymore. It's been 3 years. Then you'll relearn, Catherine said simply. You survived 3 years on the streets. If you can do that, you can pass a test. The tutor arrived the next week. Mrs. Rodriguez was a retired teacher with endless patience and kind eyes. Let's see where you are, she said during their first session. Jasmine struggled through the practice test, feeling stupid with every question she couldn't answer. She'd barely passed 2 of the 4 sections. It's okay, Mrs. Rodriguez said. This is just the starting point. So they worked. Every morning at 6, before Catherine left for work and David left for school, Jasmine sat at the kitchen table with her books. Math that made her head hurt. Science she'd never learned. History she'd forgotten. Some days she wanted to quit. On one of those days, Margaret found her in the library, surrounded by failed practice tests. You look troubled, young lady, Margaret said, having one of her rare clear moments. I'm not smart enough, Jasmine said. I'm going to fail and disappoint everyone. Margaret took her hand. My late husband used to say that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and doing it anyway. She squeezed Jasmine's hand. You've been courageous your whole life. This test is just one more thing you'll be brave enough to face. The GED test was scheduled for a Monday in April. Jasmine woke up sick with nerves. Catherine drove her to the testing center. And before she got out, Catherine put a hand on her shoulder. Whatever happens today, I'm proud of you, Catherine said. That's success, regardless of what some test says. The test took 4.5 hours. Some questions Jasmine knew immediately. Others she worked through carefully. Some she guessed on. Results would come in 6 weeks. 6 weeks of waiting. 6 weeks of waking up at 3 in the morning in a cold sweat. But during those 6 weeks, something else was happening. Catherine started coming home earlier. Having dinner with them every night. Playing video games with David. Sitting with Margaret, talking about memories. One evening, Catherine found Jasmine in the library. I hired a new operations manager, Catherine said. Someone I trust to handle the day-to-day of the real estate firm. Why? Jasmine asked, surprised. Because that night, when you gave everything you had to save my mother, you showed me what I'd lost, Catherine said. I'd been so busy building success that I forgot to build a life. You reminded me what matters. On a Thursday in May, the envelope came. Jasmine stood in the kitchen, staring at it. Inside was either her GED certificate or a failure notice. David appeared at her elbow. Want me to open it? No, Jasmine said. I'm really scared. You told Grandma Margaret everything would be okay that night, David said. You promised. Jasmine smiled despite her fear. She tore open the envelope. She'd passed. Scored in the 91st percentile overall. I did it, Jasmine whispered. I actually did it. You did it. David screamed, jumping up and down. Catherine came running. What happened? Nothing's wrong, Jasmine said, tears streaming down her face. Everything's right. I passed. I'm going to college. Catherine pulled her into a tight hug, and Jasmine realized it was the first time she'd been hugged by a mother figure since Grandma Rose died. That night they celebrated with Jasmine's favorite meal. Margaret, having a clear evening, raised her glass. "To Jasmine," she said, her voice strong, "who reminds us what it means to be brave and kind and human." And Jasmine, looking around the table at these people who'd become her family, felt something she hadn't felt in years. Joy. 3 years later, Jasmine Brooks stood in front of a lecture hall at Chicago State University, finishing her guest presentation for an introduction to social work class. She was 20 years old now, studying for her bachelor's degree while working part-time at a nonprofit. "People always ask me," Jasmine said to the 70 students in the room, "why I gave everything I had that night to save a stranger. Why I risked my life. And my answer is always the same, because that's what we're supposed to do. That's what makes us human." She looked out at the diverse group of students preparing to enter a profession built on caring for others. "It's not about grand gestures or heroic moments," Jasmine continued. "It's about small choices made in critical moments. To stay or walk away. To help or ignore. To see people or look through them." After the lecture, a young woman approached, thin, weary, with eyes that held too much pain. "I need help," she said quietly. "I aged out of foster care last month. I'm trying to stay in school, but I've been sleeping in my car." Jasmine put a hand on her shoulder. "Hey, it's okay. We're going to figure this out together. Have you eaten today?" The student shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "Come on," Jasmine said. "Let's get you some food, and then we'll talk about housing and resources. Sound good?" As they walked across campus together, Jasmine thought about that cold December night 3 years ago. About Margaret and Catherine and David. About the family she'd found and the life she'd built. "Why are you helping me?" the student asked. "You don't even know me." Jasmine smiled, remembering asking Catherine the same question. "Because my grandmother once told me that you're never poor if you still have kindness," Jasmine said. "And because nobody should have to feel invisible." "I've felt invisible for so long," the student whispered. "I know," Jasmine said. "But not anymore. We've got you now." After getting the student connected with immediate help, Jasmine drove home to the stone mansion. Her home now, truly. David was there, home from his first semester at Northwestern. Margaret was sitting in her favorite chair by the window, having one of her increasingly rare clear days. Catherine was in the kitchen, cooking dinner, something she'd learned to love doing for her family. "How was the presentation?" Catherine asked. "Good," Jasmine said. "Helped a student after. She reminds me of me." "They all remind you of you," David said with a smile. "That's why you're so good at this." After dinner, Jasmine walked out to the front steps, to the spot where it had all happened. A small memorial plaque had been installed there, just as Catherine promised. "In memory of the night that saved us all. Home is where someone waits for you. Family is who stays." Jasmine touched the plaque as she always did when she needed to remember. "Still talking to them?" David's voice came from behind her. Jasmine turned and smiled. "Always." David came to stand beside her. "You know what I realized? That night saved all of us. Grandma Margaret, obviously. But also Mom. It reminded her what mattered. Me, it gave me a sister and showed me what real courage looks like. And you, it gave you everything. We saved each other," Jasmine said. "That's what family does." Inside, Catherine watched them through the window, thinking about her mother, thinking about the strange miracle of that December night, thinking about how sometimes the people we save end up saving us right back. Last month, Catherine had done something she'd been thinking about for a long time. She'd started a foundation, the Margaret Stone Foundation for Youth Empowerment. It would provide housing, education, job training, and support for young people aging out of foster care or experiencing homelessness. And she'd asked Jasmine to help run it. "Your perspective, your lived experience, it's invaluable," Catherine had said. "These kids need someone who understands. Someone who's been there." So now Jasmine spent her days studying social work and her evenings volunteering at the Foundation's first shelter. She worked with teenagers who'd been forgotten by the system, kids who'd learned to be invisible, young people who just needed someone to see them. And with each one, Jasmine brought her own experience, her own understanding, her own refusal to walk away. One evening, a 17-year-old came into the shelter, a girl named Aaliyah, scared and alone and trying so hard to be brave. "First time here?" Jasmine asked gently. Aaliyah nodded. "I'm Jasmine. Want some food? We've got spaghetti tonight. Real food, the good stuff." As Aaliyah ate, Jasmine sat across from her and said the words that had once been said to her. I was homeless too. I know how hard it is. But you don't have to do this alone anymore. Aaliyah looked up, searching Jasmine's face, finding only understanding. What happened to you? She asked. How did you get out? So Jasmine told her. Not the sanitized version that appeared in news articles, but the real version. The fear, the cold, the choice to help someone even when it cost everything. Sometimes, Jasmine said, all it takes is being there, being willing, being kind, even when it's hard. Can I stay here tonight? Aaliyah asked. Absolutely, Jasmine said. And tomorrow we'll talk about next steps. You don't have to be alone anymore. That night, as Jasmine drove home through the Chicago streets, she thought about all the lives that had changed because of one impossible night. Margaret, who'd lived her final years surrounded by love. Catherine, who'd learned to prioritize family over work. David, who'd gained a sister. Aaliyah and dozens of other kids who were finding hope. And herself, Jasmine Brooks, who'd gone from invisible to essential, from homeless to home. The snow started falling, gentle this time, beautiful, not dangerous. Jasmine pulled up to the mansion, to the home where someone was always waiting, where family meant the people who chose to stay. She touched the memorial plaque one last time before going inside. Thank you, Grandma Rose, she whispered, for teaching me that kindness changes everything. Inside, the lights were warm. David was setting the table. Margaret was humming softly in her chair. Catherine was pulling a pie from the oven. There you are, Catherine said, smiling. We were waiting for you. Dinner's ready. And Jasmine walked into the warmth, into the light, into the life she'd built from one impossible choice on one impossible night. The choice to stay. Before you go, I want you to think about something. Every single day, you have a choice. When you see someone struggling, someone in pain, someone who's been made invisible, you can walk away, or you can stay. You can protect yourself, or you can reach out. Jasmine was just 17 years old with nothing to her name, but she chose kindness. She chose to stay. And that one choice changed everything. What choice will you make? If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you're never poor if you still have kindness. Thank you for listening.